Firm as a rock, yet light as a feather, amber was used early on as a decoration in richly colored palettes, from honey gold to orange red, the gold of the sea. Only the great love of a potentate for splendor could presume to waste amber as wallpaper. Friedrich had amber shipped from Königsberg to Berlin by the ton. The bare walls of the inner sanctum, where the king smoked, drank, and philosophized, were completely covered with mosaics made from the sunstone. That the state budget almost collapsed as a result was only of marginal interest. The glory of Prussia reigned supreme. State visitors from throughout the world were lured here, including the Tsar, Peter the Great. When the Tsar came to Berlin in 1716, Friedrich III's son, Friedrich Wilhelm I, was ruler. He sold his father's jewels and saved every penny for the building of the army. In a gesture of generosity, as well as a shrewd political calculation, he gave the Amber Room to the Tsar as a gift. The Prusso-Russian alliance was sealed. As Peter the Great left Berlin for St. Petersburg, he was one famous treasure richer and more resolved than ever to make an international metropolis of his own capital. He wanted to modernize his backward agrarian state, no matter what the cost. He brought in architects from Germany, France, and Italy. The Tsar's city was to become a window to the West. As the Amber Room set off from Berlin to St. Petersburg, the Tsar sent 55 of his best soldiers as bodyguards to ensure it reached its destination safely. Packed in 18 crates and under this military guard, the Amber Room arrived in St. Petersburg. In 1755, it was moved to an even greater setting here in Pushkin, a king's mansion for a king's treasure. Today, the walls in the Tsar's palace are stripped of their former splendor. There exists only a single color photo of the Amber Room, but it must have had the same effect on its admirers then as it does today. There are few people still living who have marveled at the Amber Room with their own eyes.
besichtigt und bewundert als eine traumhafte, ganz andere Welt.
I visited the palace and admired it as a dreamlike, completely different world which seems like a fairy tale.
Kommt so selten.
One comes into contact with this world so rarely that this contact works like a celebration.
Das war eine ganz.
It was a very important discovery for me personally, and thus the certain realization there is something in life which is very special, beautiful.
Es gibt was im Leben Besonderes Schönes.
Diese Tatsache, dieses Staunen, was das soll, Bernstein.
This fact, this astonishing fact, that's supposed to be amber? You could do that with amber? Had it been just any type of stone, which was recognized as being used as wall or floor covering, one wouldn't have admired it as much. But amber, that was simply incomprehensible. And these things that could be done with it, the effects, they were just like paintings, these medallions.
The room set aside for the amber treasure in Pushkin was considerably larger than the one in Berlin. It was masterfully reconstructed with additional wood carvings and 24 Venetian mirrors. The world had never seen anything like it. 200 years later, June the 22nd, 1941, World War II is raging. Hitler's troops have invaded the Soviet Union. For 900 days, St. Petersburg was under siege. Yet no German soldier was successful at setting even a foot within the city limits. But they did penetrate into the suburbs, including Pushkin. In the middle of the battle zone was the Katharina Palace. A combination of Russian and German bombs tore the Grand Hall apart. But miraculously, the Amber Room remained intact. Among the Germans who clambered over charred furniture and the collapsed ceilings of the palace was Captain Hans Hundsdorfer.
Es war schon ziemlich viel abgerissen von.
There was already quite a bit torn from the walls, so that the mirrors were also uncovered. And the paintings painted on ivory were also uncovered. I had to chase two sergeants away because they were trying to dig out souvenirs with their bayonets.
And it didn't stop at just small souvenirs. The biggest art thief of all, Adolf Hitler, was waiting behind the scenes. The Nazi leader wanted to fill the German museums with more than the typical monumental kitsch. The looting of Russia was directed by Erich Koch. The fate of the Amber Room lay in this man's hands. The Nazis justified their art thefts in the occupied territories by claiming they were only saving the treasures before they were destroyed and lost forever. Such was the case at the Katharina Palace. In 36 hours, the SS took apart the Amber Room paneling and, in 24 crates, transported them by truck home to the Reich. Closely guarded and declared as property of the German Reich, the stolen treasure went to Königsberg, now known as Kaliningrad. The city's castle, part of the Amber Room was rebuilt. Its new home was the South Wing, 3rd floor, room 37. Entertainment for the officers in the middle of the catastrophe of war. The art director at the Königsberg Castle, Alfred Roeder, wrote in a newspaper that the Amber Room had returned to its home in the best and most profound meaning of the word. Then, in August 1944, in 2 heavy nighttime attacks, the bombers of the British Air Force unloaded their deadly cargo over Königsberg. The inner city was destroyed and the castle burnt down. But before the raid, Roeder had packed the Amber Room in crates and loaded it into the cellar. As to the treasure's fate, the recollections of the last 2 surviving witnesses seemed to contradict one another.
Dr. Roeder and I, we were still in the castle and were surveying the damage. Everything was destroyed. And on this occasion, Dr. Roeder said to me again, sort of casually one might say, "Thank God the Amber Room was spared."
Dr.
Roeder was pale. He must have passed directly in front of me while coming into the courtyard. My first question was, "So, Dr. Roeder, the Amber Room, it's all gone."
Es ist alles hin.
Nein, das stimmt nicht.
No, that simply isn't true. That he said that. Well, he didn't specifically mean the amber room by that. It wasn't even there. Then the woman says, as anyone caught up in the initial commotion would say, you see, there's nothing left, or something to that effect. But it just wasn't so. So, on no account is that
Also
true.
das stimmt auf keinen Fall.
Unten in den Kellergewölben lag eine honigähnliche
Below in the vaults lay a honey-like mass
versehen
with burnt wood.
ausgebrannte
And there he said, here lies the amber room.
Hier liegt das Bernsteinzimmer.
Das kann
No, that can't be true. If it had melted, we would have known something about it.
Das wäre uns auch aufgefallen.
Who, then, is to be believed? Why did Roeder create such confusion? Did he want to keep the news about the destruction of the Amber Room from the German people? Or did he want the whereabouts of the treasure to remain a secret? The unexplained returns. Since the winter of 1944, Königsberg had been surrounded by the Red Army and was under constant shelling. After desperate resistance, German troops surrendered on April the 10th, 1945. Security officers and art experts followed the Soviet soldiers on their march towards the west. Yet as members of Stalin's Trophy Commission searched for the Amber Room in the Königsberg Castle, only a few charred pictures and paintings were recovered. Their last hope of finding anything was Alfred Roeder. The Russians knew that the crates containing the Amber Room were last under his care, either in the courtyard or the cellar of the Königsberg Castle. Roeder was not an ardent Nazi, but a German civil servant and an ironclad protector of items entrusted to him. He was interrogated by the Soviets over a period of weeks, but he wouldn't or couldn't reveal the secret of the Amber Room. Before anything was answered, Roeder, along with another prisoner, died, struck down by typhoid.
Die Legende lautete, die beide
According to the legend, both were victims of an illness and are buried in the cemetery.
aber man stellte fest,
But it has been established that under the tombstone which stood there,
der dort stand,
no one was buried.
war niemand begraben.
A missing body and a missing room.
Wie in der Bibel steht, der sucht,
As it is
der
written in the
sucht, der
Bible,
findet.
he who seeks shall find. Here they searched poorly. Furthermore, we were lacking topographical and other data about Königsberg itself.
Angaben über Königsberg selbst.
The East Prussian capital was the last known whereabouts of the Amber Room. Every search had its starting point here. It was like a whodunit in which an invisible...
When you decide you want to...
Those involved included the Russian KGB and the German Stasi, as well as the German Federal Chancery, mass media, amateur researchers, and adventurers from all over the world. But few traces of Königsberg remain in Kaliningrad. Only a few ruins of the old city rise out of the modern building developments. Here, where the Russian communists were planning their high-rise districts, once stood the castle with the Amber Room. With the castle long since gone, what has happened to the Amber Room? Where is it? Was it burned when British bombers destroyed Königsberg? sunk with a ship in the Baltic Sea when the Germans tried to save it from the Russians? Or did a special German commando unit manage to smuggle the Amber Room out of Russian-occupied East Prussia by land over the Oder and Elbe rivers to Weimar, or into the last of Hitler's underground bunkers in the Jona Valley? Or did it come into the area of Göttingen, in the tunnels of a former potash mine? For years, a German researcher concentrated his search here. He suspected that the Amber Room was lying 660 meters down a filled-in shaft in the mines. He did everything possible to get the shaft opened, but to no avail. Georg Stein was one of many who would give their life for the Amber Room. In August 1987, some people going for a walk in the forest in Bavaria found a horribly mutilated body. It was the body of Georg Stein. Next to him, a knife. Suicide, the Stasi explained. Even the State Security Service of the GDR have searched for the Amber Room.
Since an entire series of documents expressly pointed to the possibility of it being located in Saxony, we regarded it as a responsibility to pursue the clues and either find the Amber Room on GDR territory or prove that it is not in the GDR area.
Officially, this Stasi activity never took place. But Secret Service records on the Amber Room fill entire walls. The search went underground. Hundreds of former mines, sealed tunnels and vaults of the GDR were reopened. The Stasi moles found themselves in their element. Money changed hands, but still the tracks remained cold. The more the Stasi searched, the greater their suspicion that the imperialist class enemy might have beaten them to it. In early 1945, Hitler's Germany collapsed. American troops occupied vast areas of central Germany, from which they would later have to withdraw in favor of the Soviet demarcation lines. With them went countless works of art which the Germans had stored in underground tunnels. Could a whole room of amber have been amongst the treasures? However, most clues invariably lead back to Moscow. In the cellars of the infamous Lubyanka, the headquarters of the Soviet Secret Service, documents were stored by the ton regarding enemies of the state. Here lies the fate of millions of Russians who, under communist rule, simply vanished. Are the clues to finding the Amber Room buried here? For decades, the policy had always been that as few people as possible should know where anything was to be found. Now, with a market economy, objects as well as information are being auctioned off to the highest bidder, with no one in control. The cooperation of the leaders in Moscow, both present and future, will be needed to extract the remaining secrets from the archives. Glasnost dampened the spirits of those searching for the Amber Room. When the diary of the Russian art protection officer Alexander Brusso was found, he claimed to have seen the Amber Room on June the 10th, 1945 in Königsberg, burned in the castle ruins. Brusso wrote, "A fire started by one of our soldiers was probably the explanation." But like others who claimed the treasure melted in that fire, Brusso had his critics. The KGB, for one, didn't believe him. Veteran vice chief of the KGB, Philip Bobkov.
I'm convinced that it wasn't destroyed. I believe that it is in the limited area which today is called Kaliningrad.
One of the most important events centered around a former brewery in Königsberg some years ago. A witness claims to have seen the SS stowing away large crates into the cold cellar of a brewery and then blowing up the entrances. So a team set out to investigate. Expectations were high, yet the opening of the sealed passageways was disappointing. In view of the many still uninvestigated leads, is it possible that the Russians simply gave up on the search? One could easily believe so, because since 1980, artists have been involved in a very complex and costly job. They are reconstructing the Amber Room, an order which came all the way from the Kremlin. Anyone who observes the arduous work being carried out, using handed-down designs and drawings, is struck with an impression of the beauty and size of the original. Yet in contrast to their predecessors of the 18th century, the artists of today are suffering from a lack of money and amber. It is debatable whether the eighth wonder of the world, of which only one color photo exists, can ever be reproduced. Nonetheless, the restorers are not giving up. Perhaps they only want to prove that they can also master the craft. And so, for many years now, the same pieces are dragged back and forth into the empty room of the Katharina Palace, in order at least to be able to dream about the former grandeur. On the reproduction in Pushkin dragged on, an announcement on November the 19th, 1991 in a Russian newspaper struck like a bomb. Amber Room found. At the same time, Boris Yeltsin was in Germany on a state visit. He was asked at a press conference whether he could say where the Amber Room was.
Нет, не могу. Nein, ich kann das nicht präzisieren. Aber ich weiß, das kann ich bestätigen.
It is questionable whether Yeltsin really did know where it was. Nonetheless, his statement triggered a case of gold fever. In the Jona Valley near Weimar, a group of treasure seekers discovered a labyrinth of tunnels in a mountain with quite a history to it. It was here where Hitler made his last stand. When the war was irrevocably lost, the entrances to this massive system of bunkers were blown up by the SS. Why? Eyewitnesses claim to have seen, during the last days of the war when the US troops were approaching, German trucks, disguised as Swiss Red Cross ambulances, driving into the tunnels and unloading large crates. And supposedly, there were also radio messages from an SS stormtroop leader to Reich Security Headquarters. One such message read, "Project Amber Room completed." Explosion ensued. The labyrinth of tunnels contains rooms and equipment for a provisional government headquarters built by prisoners interned at the Buchenwald concentration camp. Upon closer examination, though, this story, as with so many others, proves to be unfounded. Of course, not all of the tunnels have been opened. But the day-long searches in the mountain in which Hitler would have liked to have ordered the deployment of the last wonder weapons have unearthed no clues whatsoever about the Amber Room to date. And furthermore, is it possible to have 20 to 30 large heavy crates transported across Germany and have all those involved kept silent? Back in East Prussia, one man was incarcerated until his death in 1986. Over a period of 12 months, this prisoner was interrogated time and time again. The man given responsibility to rob Russia of all its treasures. Erich Koch.
Danke, ist genügt. Herr Richter,
in interviews, Koch stated that whilst being ready to talk about his past, he would only do so if he was given a guarantee that what he would say would not become public, nor would it be transmitted on German television.
Garantie übernehmen, dass das, was ich sage, nicht in die Öffentlichkeit, vor allen Dingen nicht im Fernsehen, aber auch das deutsche.
At some point during this interrogation, Koch claimed that the Amber Room was not destroyed in Königsberg. Instead, it was loaded onto a German ship. But which ship did he mean? 1937. With Hitler in attendance, a large ship is launched. The Wilhelm Gustloff belonged to the White Fleet of the Nazi recreational organization, Strength Through Happiness. But the strength and happiness quickly came to an end. The Wilhelm Gustloff was refitted for use during the war, first as a hospital ship, then as a refugee transporter. One person who served on this ship is former apprentice Heinz Schön. In 1945, as the Gustloff was being loaded for the last time, he was standing on deck.
Early in the morning, it was still very dark. A few trucks were driving up with crates which were unloaded and brought on board. We didn't know what was in the crates. There was some conjecture, whether it was teaching material, whether it was food provisions, or whether it was possibly the Amber Room.
On January the 30th, 1945, at Goetenhafen near Danzig, the Gustloff set sail with 6,000 refugees, all wanting to escape to the west. But during the night, 4 torpedoes from a Russian S-13 submarine found their target. "5,300 people died in the icy waters of the Baltic Sea. "49 years later, 20 miles off Swinemünde, the wreck of the Wilhelm Gustloff has become navigation obstacle number 73 on the nautical chart. Is this the final resting place of the Amber Room? For half a century, navigators have avoided this obstacle, unaware that they may be sailing past a king's fortune. This crew heads straight for it. Setting out to solve one mystery, the divers come across another. The coordinates for Obstacle 73 don't match the reported location of the Gustloff. Not only has the Amber Room vanished, so too, it would seem, has an entire shipwreck. One last attempt to find the wreck is made. Finally, the divers come across a wreck. Scraping away at the layers of barnacles that have built up over the years, the divers reveal the name on the side of the rotting hulk. They have found the Wilhelm Gustloff. With time and air running out, the divers press on. Descending into the cavernous wreck, they enter the chilling world of the unknown. Inside the ship, they discover that other divers may have already been here. Yet there are no signs that the Amber Room could have once rested here amongst the remains of thousands of refugees and soldiers. But then again, why would Eric Koch have told his Polish interrogators the truth? During interrogation, he continuously feigned losses of memory. But one statement of his kept some on the trail of the Amber Room. Where you find my personal art collection, you will also find the Amber Room. Did the eighth wonder of the world go to the West after all?
The first form of human flight remains to this day the most graceful, but the modern world has caught up with the hot air balloon, which now rises to new challenges, like flying non-stop round the world.
Obvious question, first of all, why?
It hasn't been done before.
It is the last great challenge in aeronautics.
Flying a balloon isn't that difficult a thing to do.
As the Global Challenger team begins a second attempt to circumnavigate the world, take to the skies with a Discovery Showcase. Up, up and away, tonight from 8.
I thought I should get into shape to tell you about the gorgeous course of sport, so I insisted on coming to this luxurious health farm. Well, I'm not paying. So, right arm up and point to spoiler. Right arm down to body-colored bumpers. And for the posterior, sit on sports seat and stretch to sunroof. Phew. Am I perspire?
Miss Wax, time for your colonic irrigation.
More like time to test this sporty engine.
The new Corsa Sport from Vauxhall. The small car with a big personality.
He's grown again!
Are you measuring those puppies again?
Yes.
Puppies grow 8 times faster than children, so they need their own special food. That's why I give them Pedigree Chum puppy food when they're little. Then when they're 6 months old, like this chap, I put them on Pedigree Chum Junior.
Pedigree understand dogs like vets do, so the nutrition's absolutely right.
I wish I could grow that fast.
They're looking like champions already.
Pedigree Chum. Top breeders recommended.
It was the same size as a slimline dishwasher. But the room inside, well, you could nearly fit the spare tire in there.
There's a new C9 place-setting slimline dishwasher.
Britain's biggest computer sale is now on at PC World.
A really big sale.
With the biggest choice of famous name PCs.
Massive savings.
And our best ever sale prices.
Biggest sale ever.
Where in the world? PC World's biggest ever computer sale. Now on.
Some gum problems can leave you exposed to the pain of sensitive teeth. Sensodyne is proven to relieve that pain. New improved Sensodyne F contains the antibacterial agent triclosan, so everyday brushing fights plaque and helps keep gums healthy, giving complete protection to your teeth and your gums. For sensitive teeth, new improved Sensodyne F fights pain, tooth decay, and now helps fight gum disease.
You've got so much to do. Your budget's getting tight, but Iceland make it easy for Mum to get it right. Right now it's the Iceland food sale.
Food sale?
Food you really can believe in.
Bernard Matthews turkey burgers.
Half price.
Straight cut fried chips.
Half price.
Chicago Town pizza.
Half price. Real meals.
Iceland food sale. Iceland make it easy.
For Mum.
Morning.
Morning, Dad.
Oh, yeah. I must sort out that loan. But I can't get to the bank.
Hello! There's a new convenient way to get an unsecured personal loan. Call Lombard Direct. Free on 0800 215,000. 24 hours a day. We have loans from £800 to £15,000 for almost anything, and our rates are low. One call to Lombard Direct, and you're laughing. To arrange a loan or for more information, call free on 0800 215,000.
The trail of Eric Koch's art collection, which he gathered from the belongings of concentration camp prisoners and from the museums of occupied territories, leads to the capital of the German classical period, to Weimar. It was here that local historian Hans Stadelmann became obsessed with the search for the Amber Room. His primary interest were the bunkers under the former Adolf Hitler Square.
This here is the Führer's Square itself. It is these buildings. We see here on the top, this is the Nazi District Administration Building itself. Here below is the Subdivisions Building. It must have been in these rooms in Weimar where the storage was kept.
An official list from 1945 proves that a part of Koch's art collection arrived in Weimar. Almost no one in Weimar ever learned that during the war, massive bunkers were dug out by concentration camp prisoners underneath the entire Adolf Hitler Square. Hans Stadelmann now investigates the underground labyrinth with heat-sensitive cameras.
Here we have the electromagnetic readings. These hatching works here are concrete. Here we have two concrete walls, 35 meters in length, which lead into the earth.
In one part of the complex, Eric Koch's own personal collection was apparently held for a period of time. But was the Amber Room to be found there as well?
Kommen Sie ruhig mit.
Just come with me.
Hier ist das Gewölbe.
Here is the basement. It was here, in this basement, where Koch's stolen treasures were stored, and we suspect on the basis of Koch's statement, which he himself made during his Polish captivity. There, where his art collection is, would also be the amber room. It was hidden. It was here in Weimar. Nobody found anything. The American comes across the herring pond and looks for the amber room. The Russians come from Russia and look for the amber room, where it actually belongs. And we're also looking. He who does not seek cannot find.
Treasure hunters from America and Russia have swarmed over this site, hoping to unearth the amber room. Undaunted, Hans Stadelmann continues his search. But is he digging in the right place? In this region, there are still hundreds of underground passageways, barracks and bunker sites, which were closed at the end of the war and haven't been opened since. What they conceal, nobody knows. In the end, the hunt leads back to Königsberg, where the amber room was last seen. Any shipment of the amber room out of the region surrounded by the Russians would surely have left some kind of trail. The most recent research leads to the conclusion that Koch's story about the ship perhaps wasn't entirely false. But did he also know that the amber room perhaps never arrived in Göttenhafen? At the end of the war, when the situation had become hopeless for Hitler's army in the east, special commandos carried off objects less important than the amber room by sea and by land. There are many indications that the amber room made it to the coastal area, but never to the rescue ship. Heinz Schoen, who survived the sinking of the Wilhelm Gustloff, tells a story which corresponds with the most recent information of the Russian security agencies.
There was supposedly a unit of the Volkssturm, which had orders to bring the crates with the amber room with a few trucks onto the ship. Along the way, the man found himself in a battle situation. That is, one could hear shots and thus knew that at that moment the front was drawing nearer. And one didn't at all want to bring it back. So it was then immersed in a moor on the Amber coast near Königsberg.
Ну, такая версия имеет право на существование, тем более, что мне известно.
This version is thoroughly legitimate, since I've heard a similar version. I have information that the trucks left Königsberg with the amber room crates in the direction of Pilau. But by then, Pilau had already been bombed, and the crates had already been unloaded. I have here a map of the area. Königsberg, Pilau. The road was cut off. The Russian troops were already in Groß-Heidekrug. For this reason, they unloaded it in the area of Mettgetten.
There are many eyewitnesses who last saw the crates with the amber room in the courtyard of the Königsberg Castle, ready for transport. It can be assumed that the lost treasure found its secret hiding place somewhere between Königsberg and the Baltic Sea. It has become a maze of mystery and tragedy. One man who possessed the treasure took the secret to his grave. One man who sought it out was murdered, and another simply vanished.
And the people who were involved fell into Russian captivity. They were apprehended on their way back from the coast by a Soviet unit and taken back to Russia. And one of them made it back from there.
And he's the one who told you?
Yes, not long ago, before he died.
Would you have anything to fear if you were to come public with this new theory?
Yes, I mean, it is very dangerous. Because, well, people have already died who were looking for the Amber Room.
Are you afraid?
Not really. But I'm careful.
Coming next on Discovery, a premiere. The quest examines and tries to explain many of the world's most intriguing mysteries, beginning with a report on ESP.